She had worked in that house since she was barely 20. Every morning before sunrise, Nora Williams would walk up the long road that led to the Parker estate, her old shoes tapping against the stone path. She had seen the family through joy and sorrow, but no one ever looked at her twice. To them, she was just the maid, the woman who made sure everything looked perfect. The Parker mansion stood on top of Maple Hill, with its tall white pillars and shining glass doors. Inside, every room smelled of polish and money. Nora knew each corner like her own hands. She remembered the day she first held little Noah in her arms, when he was just a few months old. His mother had died young, and from that day, Nora became the one he ran to when he was scared, sick, or lonely. Michael Parker, the father, was a man buried in work. He was kind, but always too busy. The real power in the house was his mother, Mrs. Evelyn Parker. She watched everyone with cold eyes, especially Nora. Evelyn would often say, "A maid should know her place." Whenever she saw Nora and Noah laughing together, Nora would just smile and bow her head, pretending not to hear. But deep down, she knew Evelyn wanted her gone. One quiet Thursday morning, the house was different. The air felt heavy. The staff moved in whispers, and Evelyn's voice could be heard down the hallway. When Nora stepped into the living room, everyone stopped talking. Michael stood by the window, holding a glass of water that he hadn't touched. Evelyn was sitting on the couch, holding an empty velvet box. Her face was pale with anger. "Nora," she said, her voice sharp, "the family jewel is missing." Nora blinked in confusion. "Ma'am, I don't understand." Evelyn stood, her hands trembling slightly. "You were the last one near the jewelry room last night. The cameras show no one else passing by. Where is it?" The words hit Nora like cold rain. She shook her head quickly. "No, ma'am. I only went there to dust the hallway. I never touched anything." Evelyn's eyes hardened. "Then explain why the jewel is gone." Michael finally spoke, his tone tired. "Mother, maybe we should just check again before we assume anything." Evelyn turned sharply toward him. "You want me to assume nothing after our family's symbol of honor disappears? She's been here long enough to know where everything is. Don't defend her." Nora looked at Michael, hoping he would believe her. For years, she had cared for his son, cooked for his family, and kept their secrets. But now, he couldn't even meet her eyes. Later that afternoon, 2 police officers arrived at the mansion. Nora's hands shook as they searched her small maid's room. They opened her drawers, lifted her blanket, even checked inside her shoes. One of them whispered to the other, "Doesn't look like she's got much." When they found nothing, Evelyn crossed her arms. "She's clever. She must have hidden it somewhere outside." The officers told Nora she had to come with them for questioning. Noah ran from his playroom, crying. "No, don't take her. She didn't do anything," he shouted. Evelyn tried to pull him back, but he clung to Nora's skirt. Nora knelt down, wiping his tears gently. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said softly. "Be strong for me." Her voice cracked, but she smiled for him. When Nora stepped outside, cameras flashed. Reporters were already there, shouting questions. "Did you steal from the Parkers? Is it true you sold the jewel?" Her picture was taken, her face printed in papers by nightfall. By the time she returned home, her landlord had seen the news. Her key no longer worked. Her neighbors stared as she carried her old bag down the street. Days turned into weeks. The police didn't find the jewel, but no one cared. People whispered that she must have hidden it far away. Shops stopped letting her buy on credit. Even at church, some avoided her pew. One evening, Nora sat alone at her small table, staring at a cup of tea she couldn't drink. Her eyes were tired, but she couldn't sleep. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, little Noah stood there with his school bag. His driver waited by the car. "Nora," he whispered, holding out a folded paper. She took it and unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing of two stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small, with the words, "Me and Mommy Nora," written in a child's handwriting. Tears filled her eyes. "Daddy doesn't talk to me anymore," Noah said sadly. "Grandma says I can't ask about you, but I miss you." Nora hugged him tightly. "You be brave, Noah. Always tell the truth, no matter what anyone says." The driver cleared his throat softly. "We have to go, sir." Nora watched as the car drove off, the paper shaking in her hands. The next morning, a letter arrived from the court. She had been officially charged with theft of the Parker jewel. No lawyer, no money, and no one to stand for her. The words blurred before her eyes. That night, she sat by the window, staring at the dark sky. "God," she whispered, "you know I didn't take it. I have nothing, but please, don't let this be how my story ends." Outside, thunder rolled across Maple City. Somewhere in the mansion she once called home, Evelyn sat sipping tea, calm and satisfied. Michael stayed in his office, staring at the empty velvet box. He wanted to believe Nora, but his mother's voice echoed in his head. "A good man protects his family name." And in another room, Noah lay awake clutching his drawing, tears running quietly down his cheeks. He remembered something from that night, something that made his small heart beat fast. He had gotten up for water, walked past his grandmother's office, and seen her hiding something shiny in a wooden box with a gold lock. He didn't understand what it meant, but he remembered her face, the same cold look she gave Nora. As lightning flashed outside, Noah whispered to himself, "I have to tell Daddy." But he didn't know yet that the truth he carried could change everything. The morning of Nora's court hearing came cold and gray. She stood outside the Maple County courthouse with her small brown coat wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The wind carried whispers from people passing by. Some pointed at her, others shook their heads. She could hear the word "thief" carried softly between their lips. Her shoes were worn, her hands trembling. For 20 years she had served the Parker family with all her heart, and now she was standing before the law like a criminal. She had no lawyer, no family beside her, and no one to speak on her behalf. Inside the courtroom, the smell of old paper and polish filled the air. Nora sat at the defendant's table, her fingers twisting a handkerchief she had carried for years. The judge entered, and the whole room rose. Reporters filled the benches, ready to turn her pain into tomorrow's headlines. Across the room sat Michael Parker, dressed in a dark suit, his eyes fixed on the floor. Evelyn sat beside him, her pearl necklace shining, her lips pressed tightly together. Nora looked at them and felt something break inside her chest. She had once prayed for that family every night, but now she was just a name they wanted to erase. When the charges were read aloud, Nora felt the room tilt. Theft of a family heirloom valued at $300,000. Her throat tightened, but she kept her head up. The judge asked, "Do you have legal representation, Miss Williams?" Her voice came out small. "No, sir, I don't." Evelyn's lawyer, Mr. Richard Stone, stood and spoke smoothly. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Miss Williams had full access to the mansion, and the jewel vanished under her watch. There's camera footage missing from that night, which points directly to her interference." Nora's eyes widened. "I never touched the cameras," she said quickly. "I swear it." Richard smiled coldly. "Of course you didn't, Miss Williams. Perhaps it just turned off on its own?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. The judge silenced the room with his gavel. "That will be enough. Miss Williams, you will return next week for a formal hearing. You're released on bail of $2,000. Nora's heart sank. She didn't have 2,000 cents, much less $2,000. As she left the courtroom, reporters pushed microphones toward her face. "Did you steal it? Do you have anything to say to the Parker family?" Her silence was twisted into guilt by every camera. By evening, her face appeared on every local channel under the headline, "Maid turns thief." That night, she returned to her small, rented room with nothing but a cup of tea and the drawing Noah had given her. She placed it near her bed and stared at it through tears. "God," she whispered, "why are they doing this to me?" She thought of leaving Maple City, but something in her heart told her to stay. If she ran, they would call her guilty forever. The next morning, she walked to a small office near downtown with a faded sign that read, "Maple Legal Aid Services." Inside, rows of desks were filled with young lawyers, flipping through piles of papers. When the receptionist asked for her name, she hesitated. "Nora Williams," she said softly. A young woman with kind eyes overheard and walked up to her. "Miss Williams, I'm Chloe Davis. I read about your case." Nora looked down, ashamed. "Then you already think I'm a thief." Chloe shook her head. "No, I think your story doesn't make sense. I'd like to help you." For the first time in weeks, someone spoke to Nora without judgment. Chloe offered her a seat and poured her a cup of coffee. "Tell me everything," she said gently. Nora told her how she worked for the Parkers, how she loved Noah like her own child, and how the cameras went missing the night before the jewel disappeared. Chloe wrote down every detail, her face tightening with concern. "Do you remember who was near the jewelry room that day?" she asked. Nora nodded slowly. "Mrs. Evelyn. She came up late that night, said she wanted to check on her pearls. I didn't think much of it." Chloe leaned back in her chair. "That's important. Do you know if there were cameras in the hallway?" "Yes, but they said one was turned off. I don't know why." Chloe frowned. "Strange. Cameras in rich houses don't just turn off by accident." For the next few days, Chloe worked endlessly. She requested the house security records and noticed something strange. The footage stopped for exactly 30 minutes, the same time the jewel went missing. She also found that 2 longtime staff members, the gardener and the cook, had both taken sudden leave right after the incident. Then, while checking online archives, Chloe discovered something shocking: a photo from a charity gala taken a week after the jewel's disappearance. It showed Evelyn Parker, smiling for the cameras, wearing a necklace identical to the stolen one. When she showed it to Nora, tears filled Nora's eyes. "That's it. That's the same jewel." Chloe nodded. "We're getting closer. But they'll try to destroy your name before we even step into court. Are you ready for that?" Nora nodded weakly. "I've already lost everything. I just want the truth." Back at the Parker mansion, Evelyn sat by the fireplace, reading a newspaper headline that read, "Maid fights back." She frowned. How dare she? Michael looked up from his laptop. "Mother, maybe we made a mistake. What if she's telling the truth?" Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Don't be foolish, Michael. She's desperate. Desperate people will say anything." Michael sighed deeply. He remembered the times Nora comforted Noah when his mother died, how she worked late nights without complaint. His mind was full of doubt, but he couldn't speak against his mother. Meanwhile, little Noah listened from the hallway. He clutched his small drawing and whispered to himself, "Grandma's lying." The next morning, Chloe called Nora. "I need you to meet me at the courthouse tomorrow. We're filing an appeal. I'll represent you myself." Nora's voice trembled. "Why would you help me, Miss Chloe? You don't even know me." "Because," Chloe said firmly, "if we stay quiet while the rich crush the poor, then what's the point of being a lawyer?" That night, Nora knelt beside her bed again. "Thank you, Lord," she said softly. "I don't know how this will end, but I'm not alone anymore." Outside, the city lights glowed faintly through her window. Somewhere across town, Evelyn looked at her locked office drawer where the wooden box lay hidden, the gold key glimmering beside her cup of tea. And inside that box, the jewel everyone was looking for still rested quietly, waiting for the day truth would no longer stay buried. The courtroom was full again, but this time the air was heavier. Reporters packed every bench, cameras waiting to catch every tear, every word. Nora sat quietly beside Chloe Davis, her new lawyer. Her hands were clasped tightly together, her face calm but her heart filled with fear. Michael Parker and his mother sat on the opposite side. Evelyn wore a gray suit and pearls, her chin lifted proudly. She whispered something into her lawyer's ear, then looked across the room at Nora with cold eyes. Chloe leaned toward Nora. "No matter what happens today, keep your head high," she said softly. "Truth has its own way of coming out." The judge entered, and everyone stood. As the hearing began, Richard Stone, Evelyn's lawyer, walked to the front with confidence. "Your Honor," he said, "this case is simple. The defendant, Miss Williams, had access to the Parker family's most valuable possession. The jewel vanished under her watch, and the evidence points to her carelessness or greed." Chloe stood next. "Your Honor," she said clearly, "what this case shows is not greed, but power, the kind that allows a rich woman to point at her maid and expect the world to agree." A quiet stir filled the room. The judge raised an eyebrow but allowed her to continue. Chloe began presenting her evidence. She held up photos, documents, and statements she had gathered. "The security camera that was said to be broken," she said, "stopped recording for exactly 30 minutes from 10 to 10:30 p.m. That is not an accident. Someone with access had to disable it." Richard laughed softly. "And you're saying my client, a respected woman, would do such a thing?" Chloe met his eyes calmly. "I'm saying someone in that house did. And we have more." She handed the judge a printed photo from the charity gala. This was taken 1 week after the alleged theft. You can clearly see Mrs. Evelyn Parker wearing the same jewel that was reported missing. Gasps filled the courtroom. Reporters leaned forward, cameras clicked rapidly. Evelyn's face froze for a moment, but she quickly forced a smile. "That's not the same necklace," she said sharply. "It's a family replica." Chloe turned to her. "Do you have proof of that replica, ma'am?" Evelyn's lawyer jumped in. "Objection. The question is irrelevant." The judge sighed. "Sustained, but we will revisit that point if needed." Nora kept her eyes low, silent. She didn't want to look at Michael. She didn't want to see the man who once trusted her sitting beside the woman who destroyed her life. Then, Chloe called her to the stand. Nora walked slowly, her steps heavy. She placed her hand on the Bible and promised to tell the truth. "Miss Williams," Chloe began gently, "how long did you work for the Parker family?" 20 years, Nora answered. "And during that time, did you ever have any issues or complaints?" "No, ma'am. I loved that family. I raised Noah like my own." Evelyn shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Chloe continued. "Did you steal the Parker jewel?" Nora shook her head firmly. "No. I would rather go hungry than take what's not mine." Tears formed in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters looked moved. Then Richard stood to cross-examine. "Miss Williams, you expect us to believe that you, a woman with no money, no education, and no home, had no reason to steal something worth $300,000? Nora took a slow breath. "I may not have money, sir, but I have peace, and I never trade my peace for gold." The room stayed quiet. Richard frowned and turned away. When Nora stepped down from the stand, she glanced at Noah, who sat with his nanny near the back. He waved his little hand weakly, and she managed a soft smile. As the session paused for a break, Michael stepped out into the hallway. His mind was spinning. The photo, the missing camera, Nora's words, they all haunted him. Evelyn followed him. "Don't you dare start doubting, Michael," she whispered harshly. "That woman is trying to destroy this family." He looked at her. "Mother, she was part of our family for 20 years. If she wanted to steal, she could have done it long ago." Evelyn's lips tightened. "You've grown weak. That maid has poisoned your son's mind, and now yours." Before he could respond, Noah walked up to them holding his sketchbook. Grandma, he said softly, why did you hide the shiny thing? Evelyn froze. What did you say? I saw you that night, Noah continued innocently. You had something shiny in your hand, and you put it in your wooden box in your office. I couldn't sleep, so I went to get water, and I saw you. Michael's face went pale. Noah, are you sure? Noah nodded. Yes, Daddy. I remember the box had a gold lock. That's where you told me to never touch. Evelyn's hand trembled. He's just a child. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But Michael had already turned away. Without a word, he walked quickly toward the exit. Evelyn tried to follow, but he told her to stay. Back inside the courtroom, whispers spread like fire. Reporters noticed Michael's sudden movement. Chloe glanced toward the door, sensing something was happening. Minutes later, Michael returned, holding a small, dark wooden box with a gold lock. He walked straight to the judge's bench. Your Honor, he said quietly, I found this in my mother's office. It was locked. Please open it. The judge ordered the bailiff to bring it forward. With a small key found in the same drawer, the box opened. Inside, lying neatly on a piece of velvet cloth, was the missing Parker jewel. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, flashes of cameras filled the air. Evelyn's face turned pale as she grabbed the edge of her chair. Michael, you don't understand, she cried. I was only what? He asked, his voice breaking. Trying to teach her a lesson? Evelyn said nothing. The judge pounded his gavel. Order in the court! When silence returned, he looked directly at Evelyn. Mrs. Parker, you will remain here for questioning. Miss Williams, you are cleared of all charges pending verification. Nora covered her mouth with both hands. Tears rolled down freely. Chloe held her shoulder, whispering, You're free, Nora. You're free. Michael turned toward Nora, his voice shaking. I'm sorry. I let my fear make me blind. Nora looked at him through her tears. It wasn't your fear, sir. It was her hate. Noah ran from his seat and threw his arms around her waist. I told them you didn't do it, Mommy Nora. The courtroom fell silent again, touched by the boy's words. Cameras clicked, capturing the moment that would soon spread across every screen in Maple City. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded them. Some shouted questions, others just watched in awe as Nora knelt and hugged Noah tightly. In the distance, Evelyn was escorted away quietly, her head bowed for the first time. That night, headlines changed. Maid accused of theft, found innocent Parker family under investigation. But for Nora, it wasn't about fame. It was about getting her life back, and the little boy who refused to let lies win. Days after the courtroom exploded with the truth, Maple City was still talking about it. Every newspaper, every TV channel, and every social media post carried the same story. The maid who was called a thief turned out to be the victim. For the first time in weeks, Nora Williams could walk down the street without people whispering in disgust. Instead, they nodded with respect, some even smiling at her with pride. But even as the city celebrated her victory, Nora felt no joy in seeing Evelyn Parker fall. She didn't want revenge, only peace. What hurt her most wasn't the accusation, but how easily the people she served for 20 years had believed a lie. A few days later, the court reconvened. This time, Evelyn sat in the defendant's seat. Her fine clothes couldn't hide the worry on her face. Michael Parker sat alone behind her, watching silently. Noah clutched his small sketchbook beside his father, his legs swinging under the bench. The judge spoke firmly. Mrs. Evelyn Parker, you are found guilty of false accusation, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. You will serve 6 months of house arrest and pay financial penalties for damages caused. The courtroom murmured. Evelyn lowered her head. It was the first time in her life she looked small. When the session ended, Michael approached Nora. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said quietly, but I need to say this. I failed you. I failed my son. You were the heart of that house, and I let my silence destroy you." Nora looked at him for a moment, her eyes soft but tired. "Mr. Parker," she said calmly, "forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go, so peace can find its way back." He nodded slowly. "Then let me try to make things right." Weeks passed, and life began to move again. Nora moved into a small apartment on the west side of the city. It wasn't big, but it was hers. She found comfort in simple things, watering her plants, cooking her favorite stew, hearing laughter from the children who played outside her window. One evening, there was a knock at her door. When she opened it, she saw Michael and Noah standing there, holding flowers. "Mr. Parker," she said in surprise, "you didn't have to come." Michael smiled faintly. "Please, just Michael. We came to thank you. You changed more than you know." Noah held up a folder. "Daddy made something for you." Inside was a document titled Second Chance Foundation. Michael explained, "It's a foundation to help people who were wrongly accused, just like you. I want you to lead it. I've already spoken to your lawyer, Miss Chloe Davis. She agreed to partner with you." Nora's eyes filled with tears. "Me? Why me?" "Because no one knows what it feels like better than you do," Michael said gently. "And because I trust you with my son, and now with something even bigger hope." For a long moment, Nora said nothing. She looked at Noah, who smiled brightly and handed her another paper. It was a new drawing, 3 stick figures this time, holding hands. Above it, in big letters, he had written, "Me, Daddy, and Mommy Nora." Her tears spilled freely. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "You are my blessing, Noah." From that day, the foundation began its work. Nora and Chloe built a team of young lawyers, counselors, and volunteers who believed in second chances. They visited women's shelters, met with former prisoners, and offered free legal help to the poor. Stories began to change, one by one. Months later, at the foundation's opening ceremony, the hall was filled with people. Reporters, city officials, and families came to show support. Michael stood on the stage beside Nora, his voice steady. "Today," he said, "we open a door that should have never been closed. I once believed lies because I was afraid of shame. But truth is never shameful. This foundation is not just for Nora, but for everyone who's ever been silenced by power." The crowd applauded warmly. Nora stepped forward, her voice quiet but full of emotion. "There was a time I thought my life was over. But sometimes, what breaks us can also build us. I stand here not as a maid or a victim, but as a woman who found her voice again." Cameras flashed as she held Noah's small hand. Chloe smiled proudly from the front row. Later that evening, as the guests left and the lights dimmed, Nora stood outside the building, looking at the glowing sign that read Second Chance Foundation. The air was calm, and she could hear the faint sounds of the city car horns, laughter, and wind passing through trees. Michael joined her quietly. "You changed everything, Nora," he said softly. "For me, for Noah, for everyone." She smiled faintly. "No, Michael. It was your son. His courage opened your eyes. And mine too." He looked toward Noah, who was chasing butterflies in the nearby garden. "He sees the world better than we do," he said. Nora nodded. "Children see truth because their hearts are clean." Michael turned to her. "You know, my mother once told me that family is blood. But she was wrong. Family is who stands by you when the world turns away." Nora looked at him, her eyes gentle. "Then we are family now." They stood in silence for a moment, watching Noah laugh under the soft evening light. The same boy whose small voice once broke a wall of lies was now free, happy, and whole again. The next morning, news spread across Maple City about the foundation's first success. A young woman cleared of false theft charges after years in jail. Reporters called it the Nora effect. In her office, Nora placed a framed photo of herself, Noah, Michael, and Chloe on her desk. Beside it sat the old drawing Noah had given her, wrinkled, faded, but still perfect. As she looked at it, her eyes filled with quiet peace. She whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for turning my pain into purpose." Outside the window, sunlight poured over the city. A new day had come, one born from truth, forgiveness, and courage. And for the first time in a long time, Nora smiled, knowing her story had finally found its ending. Dear viewers, sometimes life can turn against the kindest hearts. People can lie, twist stories, and use power to destroy someone's name, but truth never stays buried forever. This story reminds us that no matter how long it takes, light will always break through darkness. Nora was just a maid, but her courage, patience, and honesty turned pain into purpose. She lost everything, yet found peace. And through one child's courage, the world saw that even the smallest voice can change everything. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more real, emotional, and life-changing stories like this one. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story that could change how you see the world. And remember, dear viewers, truth may bend, but it never breaks.